Tottenham Hotspur are a really good example of how difficult it is to move from a back three squad to a back four squad, and that is what today's video is all about. Welcome to Sensible Transfers. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a squad, look for the weaknesses in that squad, and then suggest sensible solutions to those problems in the transfer market. We're not interested in rumour, we are not interested in conjecture, all we're interested in is smart solutions. And with all that in mind, let's turn to today's topic, Tottenham Hotspur. On the board in front of me, I have got the Spurs squad, and as you can see, it is a bit of a mess. So if we work our way through it, we've got Harry Kane up front. It may well be the case that he is away in the summer. We've got Son here, who is a bit of a half space player really, and the big question is, does he play centrally or does he play outside for Ange Postecoglou? And then if we move deeper into the central midfield space, what we've got here is a load of midfielders who all profile very similarly. Now over the last couple of seasons, Spurs have been using a two-man midfield, but Ange Postecoglou uses a three-man midfield with a ball-playing six, and then a couple of eights who have a bit more license to get forward and be involved in the attacking play. Now Spurs do have a couple of players in Oliver Skip and Yves Bissouma who could play that ball-playing six role, but the big question is, how do you fit the rest of these midfielders into these 2-8 slots? Now on paper, Tanguy Ndombele would be perfect for this role, but he was frozen out of the team, he's been away on loan, we just have no idea if he's going to want to come back and play for Spurs. Now that leaves us with these four options, and while Rodrigo Bentancur is quite well suited to this role, it's likely that Ange Postecoglou would probably want to pair him with a bit more of an attacking option. And if you look at those three remaining options, well, they're clearly not that guy. And so for many people, this is the big problem that Spurs are going to have to fix this window in the transfer market. And then if we move further back in the field, those problems continue to mount because we've got a load of centre-backs here, a lot of whom have questions attached with them. So on the left-hand side, we've got Clement Lenglet, who was on loan from Barcelona this season, and it's not certain whether or not he'll be back at Spurs, although there is a chance that could be the case. Now Spurs could play Eric Dyer over on the left-hand side, but it's unlikely they'd want him as a starting centre-back. So most likely he will be a backup to Christian Romero over on the right. And then we've got Sanchez and Tanganga, both of whom have been linked with moves away. So the situation looks like this. You've probably got Romero backed up by Dyer, and then you want to bring in a left-sided centre-back who can be backed up by Lenglet. So there's lots of work to be done there. And then we get to the goalkeepers, and we spent the whole of last season talking about whether or not Hugo Lloris is still up to the task of playing as a Premier League goalkeeper. He may be here next season, he may not. Either way, he's not the kind of ball-playing goalkeeper that Ange Postecoglou will want, so there's definitely work to be done around here as well. So there's a whole host of problems that Spurs have to sort out in the transfer market this summer, but there is one problem that we've not talked about, and I think it is the biggest problem they're going to face, and that is width. Because as we said, Spurs have built a squad to play a back three system, and that means that all of their width comes from wing backs. So you can see we've got 3 wing backs here, 2 wing backs here. But the problem is they've just brought in a manager who plays a back four system, who uses width in a completely different way. So the big question is, how do you make it all fit? Now to illustrate this, what I wanted to do was to show you the shape of the Celtic squad that Ange Postecoglou used last season and compare it to the squad that Spurs have at their disposal this summer. So here's the Celtic squad on this side, and as you can see, it's a really nicely set up squad if you're playing a 4-3-3 system. So you've got your back four, here's your ball playing sixes, here's your 2-8s, and then you've got wingers here and then a central striker as well. But the important thing to notice is that for Celtic, the width is being provided by wingers and fullbacks, whereas for Spurs, if we look at their squad, that width is being generated by these wing back areas here. So where the width is being generated is completely different depending on the two squads. So how do you take a squad that has been built for a back three system that generates width in wing back areas and then move it to a system where you're going to play a back four, which is generating width in wing areas and fullback areas? This is the big question that Ange Postecoglou has to solve. Now one solution that has been suggested is that you can solve this problem within the squad itself by moving players around and generating the width with the players that you already have. So what you might do then is move Son out into the left and say Son's going to play as a left-sided winger. You've already got Kulusevski over here, and then it's just a case of divvying up your wing-backs depending on whether or not you see them as being attacking or more defensive. So for example, Pedro Porro, a lot of people see as a potential wide attacking player, so let's move him up. Now Jed Spence has played as a fullback, so let's just shift him in behind Emerson Royal, and then over on the other side we've got Perisic, who has played as a wide forward, so we can slot him in behind Son, and then we can move Adoji back and Session back as fullbacks. And so that solves the problem, right? Because what we've done is we've generated width in the areas where Ange Postecoglou wants width. And so all you need to do now is solve the problem of the missing 8, splash all of your cash on the best available 8 in the market, and here's Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham Hotspur Premier League ready. But is this really a solution? Because all we've done is just move a lot of players into other positions. A lot of these players are actually now playing out of position, and it suggests that we've not actually solved the problem at all. All we've done is created future problems for future transfer windows. And we've not even considered what the tactical roles of each of these positions are anyway. So it could be the case that even if you have a player like Kulusevski in a wide area, might not even suit that position at all under Ange Postecoglou. So how does Ange Postecoglou want his team to play? And what do those wide positions look like? Well, let's just have a think about that, because Ange Postecoglou is a manager who likes possession. He wants to use possession of the ball to generate dangerous moments. And the way he's going to do that is from building up from the back. But he is going to do that in quite a direct way by creating triangles across the pitch. So what we've got is a triangle here between the centre back, the full back, and the number 6 as well. So the 6 will come across. The idea is that the ball moves across onto this side. You've got these 3 players. You can play it around the opposition press with the idea of getting the ball forward as directly as possible to their teammates. Now, when the ball does move forward, again, you've got these triangle shapes further down the field. So you've got the full back here, the number 8, and the winger as well. Now, these units of 3 players are really important. They are the creative hub of Ange Postecoglou teams, because once they've got the ball, the idea is that they possess the ball, they keep it away from the opposition, but they're also going to try and generate dangerous attacking moments. And the way that they'll do that is through positional rotation, because there's a huge amount of flexibility and fluidity in the 3 positions that we've got here. So for example, what we might see is the fullback underlapping here in order to generate a chance in the box. What we've done is we've retained that triangular structure, so these players can still retain possession if the opposition are pressing them. But what will happen is that the 8 then will move into this channel just to give a little bit more defensive protection, because the fullback is no longer there. Equally, if the winger has possession of the ball in the wide area and the opposition fullback stands them up, we might see the 8 trying to find the space in this channel so that this pass can be played. And if the 8 does do that, then what we would probably see is the fullback underlapping again retaining this triangular structure, which allows you to possess the ball. And this is one of the beauties of positional play, because this triangular structure is always flexing, it's always moving around, but it's always giving possibilities for these 3 players to receive the ball and retain possession. And because of this, each of these 3 players has to have a similar profile, but that doesn't mean to say that they are going to be identical players, because each of these positions has specific roles as well. So the fullback, for example, is expected to invert. They're expected to help out in possession in deeper areas, but also help out defensively if there's a turnover of the ball. The 8 is obviously a facilitator between these 2 players, allowing them to be in contact at all times, but also can get into wide areas and is also expected to box crash and generate dangerous chances as well, take shots and score goals. And then the wingers are expected to hold width, receive the ball, and then cause all kinds of problems for opposition defenses, coming up in 1v1 battles against fullbacks, and then having the ability to either go wide to the byline, play crosses into their teammates, or cut inside into these sorts of areas and then cross the ball to teammates, or even take shots themselves and score in that way. And it's worth mentioning as well that the opposite side winger is also expected to get into the box in these sorts of moments as well in order to be a target in the box. So you'll often see Ange Postecoglou teams with one winger playing the ball across the box, which is then finished by the other winger as well. So with these ideas in our minds, if we go back to the solution that we proposed for the width problem in the Spurs squad, we can see that it's actually not much of a solution at all, because we don't have any wide players in these 2 areas who actually fit the description of a winger that Ange Postecoglou wants in his squad. Now, Son isn't a 1v1 dribbler. He isn't going to be a guy who's going to be able to fashion cutbacks from this side of the pitch, so he'd be very one-dimensional as a wide player. Perisic is getting old now. He would be able to go both ways, but again, you're not really convinced of him 1v1 against opponents. Kulusevski, similarly, not a 1v1 dribbler. Bryan Gil, maybe. Pedro Porro, definitely not. And so this solution actually is no solution at all, because we don't have anyone fit to play in the wide areas. So moving players into the wide areas from elsewhere clearly hasn't worked. But maybe there's a better solution here. Maybe we can move a player into the middle and then solve those wide players in the transfer market. And if we do that, rather than creating problems for the future, we're solving problems now. Now, as we said, the number 8 position in an Ange Postecoglou system is expected to be a facilitator between the fullback and the wide player in ball progression, but they're also expected to get into the box themselves and score. And I think that because of this, actually Dejan Kulusevski would be a perfect number 8 for Ange Postecoglou. And on top of this, if you consider that Højbjerg is a decent backup option to both Bentancur and Kulusevski in the 8 spot, you've essentially solved the central midfield problem, and now we can focus on bringing in wingers in the transfer market. So what we're looking for is a winger who can play in those wide triangles, can have those fluid rotations, can retain possession, generate chances, but specifically we're looking for someone who's going to be really good 1v1, is going to be able to go either way around an opposition fullback, and then either get to the byline, cross it in, or cut inside and take a shot. Now, the good news here is that because you've solved the 8 problem, you could feasibly spend all of your budget on the best 1v1 dribbler in the market, and that is Kaoru Mitoma of Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, as you can see from his data, Kaoru Mitoma is someone who is very productive in front of goal, but most importantly for what we're looking at, this progressive section of the data is really, really exciting. So in terms of progressive carries into the final third, carries into the penalty area, and successful take-ons, he's really up there amongst the very, very best in the world. But as we've said, the problem here is that Spurs simply don't have any of the players of this profile, and so it might be a better use of their funds to actually split the money up and get two different options who could play one on either side. So let's take a look at a couple of players who could fulfill that kind of role. So the first player that we're going to recommend is Celtic's Jota. Now this is a perfect transfer because this is the perfect player for an Ange Postecoglou system, because he's been playing for Ange Postecoglou for the last couple of seasons and his data really shows this up. Now it's worth having a caveat before we get into this, that this is Jota's Champions League data from last season, which means that this is just a small sample size of data. This is around 300 minutes of data. But it is also worth saying that even though this is a small sample size, it does include games against some of the best teams in Europe. For example, they did play against Real Madrid in the Champions League last season. And what's really promising from this data is that against those big sides, he's clearly cutting it against the best in Europe. So as you can see, he's really fantastic in front of goal. He's got really good goal production. We've also got everything that we wanted in terms of his 1v1 attacking. So really nice progressive carries, 86th percentile, 94th percentile for successful take-on. So he's going to be able to get around fullbacks either way. And on top of that, it's worth just noticing his passing numbers as well, because as we've said, the wide player in an Ange Postecoglou system is going to be expected to make passes and crosses into the penalty area. And as we can see, 98th, 99th percentile stuff from Jota here. So this is the gold standard sensible transfer for a wide player in an Ange Postecoglou system. Now Jota does have a 2027 contract, but because he's playing for Celtic, he should be eminently affordable for Spurs, and that will leave a little bit of money left in the budget to buy someone else, and that someone else is Nico Williams from Athletic Club. Now it's worth noting at this point that this is a really nice combination of players, because both players are really Ambifootstrous, which means they're really good with both feet, right? So there's clearly a degree of flexibility here. You could play them on either side, and you could use tactical preferences to determine which one is going to play on that side. Now, as you can see, Nico Williams hasn't been as productive in front of goal for Athletic Club this season, but if we look at the rest of his data, we can see that he's a perfect profile fit for an Ange Postecoglou system. And as we saw from Jota's profile, for a winger who fits into an Ange Postecoglou system, there's much more scope to get in front of goal and generate chances. And so you might expect that if Nico Williams does go to Spurs, you'd see a boost in these numbers. Now, Nico Williams is a player for Athletic Club, and Athletic Club does have an interesting transfer policy where they will only sign players from the Basque Country, and that usually means that they're quite protective of these players. A lot of their players actually have very long contracts, but the good news is that Nico Williams only has 1 year left on his contract, and so it could be the case that Spurs are able to pick him up fairly cheaply if Athletic Club don't want to lose him for free. So what would this look like? Well, either Spurs are going to blow the bank on Mitoma, they probably have to play someone like Bryan Gil instead, or they could do the other option of bringing in two players who have Jota on one side, Nico Williams on the other, and this is just a really nice Premier League attacking unit now. Now that's not to say that everything is fixed. We've not even talked about what it means to use a wing back as an inverting fullback, but the important thing to note is that we've made concrete changes that will make future windows much, much easier. And perhaps the deeper moral of the story here is that if you are a football club and you are moving to a back three system, don't expect it to be easy to make the shift back.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.